My name is Lauren Parker. I'm 32, and last Thanksgiving my younger brother stood up in front of our entire family and announced I was getting nothing. No inheritance, no part of the house we grew up in. Not a single square foot of the life my parents always promised we'd share. One minute everyone was laughing and passing dishes. The next my brother lifted his glass like he was giving a wedding toast and said, "So, Mom and Dad are signing the house to me. Lauren gets nothing." For a second, nobody processed it. Then my aunt let out this weird little cheer. My uncle clapped, and a couple of cousins actually whooped like he'd just won the lottery instead of inherited a ticking time bomb. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table even though I could feel years of swallowed resentment boiling just under my skin. I just smiled, set my own glass down, and turned to look straight at my mother. She was frozen, eyes on her plate, knuckles white around her fork. She knew exactly what was coming. "Mom," I asked, keeping my voice calm enough to cut through the noise, "should I tell them, or will you?" Her fork slipped from her hand and hit the plate with this sharp little crack that sliced through the room. My brother's chair scraped backward. "Tell us what?" he snapped, his voice already climbing, like he could sense that his shiny new prize wasn't what he thought it was. The truth was simple. The house he thought he'd just won was drowning in debt. And he was about to find out that being the favorite child came with a mortgage-sized catch. But before I tell you what happened after my mom's fork hit the plate, and what my brother did when he realized what he'd actually inherited, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I want to see just how far this Thanksgiving disaster travels. If you want to understand why that one sentence from my brother felt like a knife, you have to rewind 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, back to Austin, where I live now. I'm a product manager at an ed tech startup, which basically means my days are spent turning chaos into roadmaps and forcing people to look at uncomfortable numbers until they finally admit we need to change course. Features don't ship because we hope for the best. They ship because we measure, plan, adjust. My parents, on the other hand, had been running their lives like a buggy beta version. No tracking, no documentation, just vibes and "we'll fix it later." 2 Fridays before the holiday, while I was wrapping up a sprint review, an email hit my inbox that was not meant for me. Subject line: Notice of delinquency. The sender was the bank that held the mortgage on the house I grew up in. My name showed up in the CC line because, years ago, I'd helped Mom set up her online banking and used my email as a recovery contact. One click, and there it was. A cold, clinical breakdown of our family legacy in red numbers. A second mortgage I'd never heard about. 3 payments behind. Late fees stacked like bad Jenga blocks. A looming balloon payment that made my salary look small. A foreclosure auction date quietly penciled in for early spring, like they were already scheduling the funeral for the place my parents kept calling the kids' inheritance. I stared at the screen the way I stare at a product dashboard that suddenly lights up with red error bars. This wasn't a rough patch. This was a system failure. I called my mom immediately. She dodged my first call, then the second. On the third, she finally picked up, using that too cheerful tone she reserves for church ladies and distant relatives. "Hey, honey, how's the big tech world?" "Mom," I cut her off. "Why am I getting foreclosure notices on the house? And when did you take out a second mortgage?" There was a pause long enough for me to see my own reflection in the dark laptop screen. That's the silence of someone calculating which lie will cause the least damage. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "We were going to tell you at Thanksgiving," she said. "Your father has a plan." At work, when someone tells me they have a plan, but can't show me a document, numbers, or a timeline, I know what that really means. They're stalling. Real plans have dates, owners, risks, and clear outcomes. Whatever my parents had was not a plan. It was a wish. Does Brandon know? I asked, already bracing myself. We've talked to him, she said. He's here. He helps us. He understands. That one sentence told me everything. They hadn't given him the risk profile, just the pitch deck. They'd told him the part where he was the loyal son, stepping up to keep the house in the family, not the part where he was about to be handed an asset with negative equity and a ticking clock. I hung up that day with my stomach in knots, my brain instantly switching into problem-solving mode. I opened spreadsheets and mortgage calculators like they were crime scene photos, tracing numbers, exploring scenarios, trying to see if there was a version of this story that ended without flashing police lights or a sheriff on the lawn. There were options, short sales, repayment plans, downsizing, but every path required something my parents hated: admitting they were in trouble. I could have confronted them fully right then, demanded a family Zoom call, screen-shared the bank portal, and forced them to face the red. But a small, furious part of me wanted to see how far they were willing to drag this performance. Have you ever watched people you love build a narrative out of denial, like they're crafting a glossy marketing campaign over a failing product? That's what those 2 weeks felt like. In every text about, "Can't wait to see you for Thanksgiving," I could hear the subtext, "We're going to smile and carve turkey while pretending the house isn't on fire." I booked my flight anyway. On the plane, I scrolled through the banking app, memorizing numbers, dates, interest rates. I told myself I was just gathering data, but underneath that, something sharper was forming. A line I wouldn't let them cross. They could call me ungrateful for moving away, selfish for choosing a career in Austin over staying in our hometown. What they could not do, not without a fight, was erase me from the story while quietly handing my brother a bomb and calling it a blessing. By the time I landed, the decision was made. If they tried to stage manage a happy Thanksgiving while hiding a financial catastrophe and crowning Brandon the chosen one, I wasn't going to play along. I was going to do what I do best, drag the ugly data into the light and force everyone to look. So when my brother, Brandon, stood up and made his big announcement, it wasn't a surprise. It was just confirmation. Still, hearing him say, "Mom and Dad are signing the house to me. Lauren gets nothing," like I was some distant cousin and not the daughter who used to help pay their light bill, made my jaw clench hard enough to hurt. He looked so smug, one hand on the back of his chair like he'd just claimed a prize on a game show. My parents didn't correct him. That was the part that hurt the most. "No, that's not how we meant it." "No, we'll discuss this as a family." Just my dad staring at his plate and my mom blinking at her wine glass, hoping maybe if she didn't make eye contact, this wouldn't turn into the reckoning she'd been avoiding. "So that's it?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're just giving him the house?" Brandon rolled his eyes. "You moved away, Lauren. You made your choice. I stayed. I helped them. I'm here." He said here like it was a moral high ground, like my life in Austin, the late nights, the long weeks, the extra freelance projects I'd taken in my 20s so they could refinance the first time, didn't count because I wasn't physically folding laundry in their living room. "I didn't realize loyalty had a property line," I said. My heart was thudding, but my voice stayed cool. Years of product demos with hostile executives had trained me well. "This isn't about loyalty," Dad muttered. "It's about practicality." Practicality. That word almost made me laugh. Practical was not taking out a massive second mortgage on a fixed-income budget. Practical was not waiting until a foreclosure notice showed up in your daughter's inbox to admit there was a problem. "Okay," I said slowly. "Since we're all being practical, let's talk about what, exactly, Brandon is being gifted." I pulled my phone from my pocket. My mother's eyes flicked to it like it was a weapon, which, honestly, it was. "Lauren, this is neither the time nor place." she hissed. Really? I asked. Because it seems like you thought Thanksgiving dinner was the perfect time and place to announce I'm being erased from the will. I think that buys me at least 5 minutes. I opened the banking app I'd logged into earlier in the car, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to let it go, to avoid the explosion. But another part, the part that remembered my mom telling me at 16 that this house will be yours and your brother's one day, refused to let them turn my silence into consent. Brandon, I said, locking eyes with him, do you know how far behind the payments are? Do you know the amount on the second mortgage? Do you know the foreclosure date? Or did they leave that part out of your coronation speech? His smugness faltered, just a little. What are you talking about? The room quieted, forks hovering mid-air, conversation dying off like someone had hit mute. I'm talking about this, I said, turning the screen around so they could see. 3 payments behind, a balloon payment due in March, a foreclosure auction scheduled for April if those numbers don't change. My aunt gasped. My uncle muttered something under his breath. My grandmother, my dad's mother, Eleanor, the one person at that table who'd never sugar-coated anything in her life, squinted at the screen and then at my father. Robert, she said sharply, what is she talking about? My father finally looked up. He opened his mouth, closed it, then ran a hand over his face like maybe if he rubbed hard enough, he could erase the last 60 seconds. We're working on it, he said weakly. It's under control. Under control. If I heard that phrase one more time, I was going to scream. Is it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're tying a sinking house around Brandon's neck and calling it a gift. And here's the question I want to ask you watching this. If your own family tried to hand you a disaster wrapped in a bow, would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or would you blow it up at the table like I just did? Brandon snatched my phone out of my hand. He stared at the numbers on the screen, his eyes racing over the overdue notices and the bright red, past due banners like they were in another language. This has to be wrong, he said, his voice cracking. Tell her, Dad. Tell her you've got this handled. Dad didn't answer right away. The silence stretched so long that even the cousins at the kids' table stopped whispering. Finally, he sighed. It got away from us, he admitted. The roof needed to be replaced. Then your mother's surgery. Then the car. I thought the refinance would give us breathing room. I didn't expect the market to turn like this. So you just didn't tell us? I asked. You didn't tell me when you signed the second mortgage. You didn't tell Brandon when you promised him the house. You just crossed your fingers and hoped the bank wouldn't notice. Don't talk to your father like that, Mom snapped. But there was more fear than anger in her voice. We were trying to protect you. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Protect us? By lying? By letting Brandon think he's getting some dream inheritance when really you're handing him a foreclosure date? Brandon finally tore his eyes from the screen. The anger had drained from his face, replaced by something rawer, more fragile. Is this true? He demanded, looking between our parents. All of it? Mom's eyes filled with tears. We thought we could catch up, she whispered. Your dad had some side work lined up, and the holidays. We wanted one more good Thanksgiving in this house before. Before what? I pushed. Before the bank took it? Before you disappeared to some rental and pretended this never existed? Eleanor cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Robert, you raised those kids to be straight shooters. Don't you dare start lying to them now that the money's gone. Everyone in the room flinched at the word gone. That's the thing about money problems. People will talk about anything else. Politics, religion, death, before they'll say the word broke out loud. It's not about the money, Brandon said suddenly, his voice hoarse. It's about the fact that you told me I was the one stepping up. That I was going to keep the home in the family, while Lauren ran off to live her big city life. You made it sound like I was the responsible one, and she was selfish. He said the last word quietly, like he was quoting them. And just like that, the real betrayal surfaced. Not the numbers, not the debt, the story. The narrative they'd spun while I was gone. Brandon, the devoted son who stayed. Me, the daughter who left, who therefore deserved less. Is that what they told you? I asked him. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I didn't leave because I didn't care, I said, my voice suddenly thick. I left because I got a job that paid enough to send money home when you needed it. Remember when the AC broke and you called me first, Mom? Who paid that bill? Remember when the hospital wanted the copay up front? Lauren, that's not fair, Mom said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. We're grateful for everything you've done. Grateful enough to cut me out without a conversation? I shot back. Grateful enough to turn my silence into permission? Brandon flung my phone back onto the table like it burned. So what am I supposed to do? He demanded. Just say thank you for the privilege of inheriting a house the bank already owns? You don't have to do anything, Dad muttered. We'll figure it out. The old script again. We'll figure it out. Translation. We'll double down on denial and hope no one notices the smoke until the fire department shows up. No, I said quietly, surprising even myself with how steady I sounded. Actually, you do have to do something. We all do. But step one is this. The house is not being signed over to anyone until every single number is on the table. No more half-truths, no more surprise announcements. I looked at my parents. You turned our family into a PR campaign to hide a financial meltdown. That ends tonight. Have you ever had to be the bad guy in your own family just to stop them from walking off a cliff? Because that's exactly what this felt like. Choosing to be the villain at Thanksgiving so my brother wouldn't wake up in a few months wondering why the sheriff was taping a notice to his front door. After that, Thanksgiving was officially ruined. The turkey sat untouched. The gravy formed a skin on top, and the green bean casserole congealed in its dish while the scent of cinnamon and roasted garlic hung in the air like a joke. Brandon shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the floor, then stormed outside, the screen door slamming behind him with a crack that made everyone flinch. For a moment, I honestly thought he might just keep walking, down the sidewalk, into his truck, out of our lives. Instead, through the window, I saw him pacing up and down the driveway, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly as he talked too fast to his girlfriend, his whole body language screaming betrayal. Inside, the rest of us sat in a silence that felt like aftershock, the kind that follows an earthquake when you're waiting to see if another one is coming. This is a family matter, Dad said finally, as if he could rewind the last 20 minutes and put the lid back on everything. We shouldn't have aired it like this. You aired it, I reminded him, my voice low but steady. You let Brandon stand up and announce he was getting the house like he'd won a prize show, and I was getting nothing. You turned me into a footnote at my own family's table. Saying nothing out loud tasted bitter, but pretending it didn't hurt would have been worse. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, careful not to smudge her makeup. We were going to talk to you, she insisted, clinging to that phrase like it could still save her. We just wanted tonight to be nice. We wanted one good memory in this house before we lose it, I finished for her. You keep stopping at the word before like the rest of the sentence doesn't exist. The bank doesn't stop halfway through a notice, Mom. Eleanor shook her head slowly, the lines on her face deepening. You can lose a house and keep a family, she said, her eyes fixed on my parents. But you can't keep a house by losing your family. It doesn't work that way, and it never has. Her words hung there, heavier than anything I could have said. I thought about all the choices that had led us here, each of them small enough to justify in the moment. Alone here, A skipped payment there, a little more interest, a little more denial. That's how most disasters happen, not with one dramatic explosion, but with 100 quiet decisions you promise yourself you'll fix later. What's the actual number? I asked Dad, my voice shifting into the same tone I use in meetings when a project's on fire, and people keep speaking in feelings instead of facts. All in. Second mortgage, missed payments, penalties. If the house sold tomorrow, what would be left after the bank gets its cut? Dad's jaw clenched. For a second, I thought he'd refuse to answer, but then he exhaled and named a figure that made my stomach drop. It was worse than I'd estimated on the plane. Not just no equity. Negative. Even if the house sold at a decent price, there would still be a debt chasing them afterwards. You should have told us, I said quietly. You should have told me when you signed the second mortgage. You should have told Brandon before you dangled the keys in front of him. We could have made a plan years ago. That's literally what I do for a living, Dad. I build roadmaps out of messes. But you took that option away. We didn't want you to feel responsible, Mom whispered. You already help so much. We didn't want to be a burden. I let out a breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. Newsflash. You became a bigger burden by hiding it. You didn't just lie to protect us. You lied to protect your pride. There's a difference. Dad winced like I'd slapped him. For a second, guilt tugged at me, but then I pictured a different scene. Brandon standing on the same porch 3 months from now, watching a sheriff tape a foreclosure notice to the door while the neighbors pretended not to stare. My parents stuffing photo albums into boxes while insisting, it's just a temporary setback. My phone lighting up with panicked calls asking if I could fix this from another state. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is be cruel to the fantasy. What do we do now? Mom finally asked, her voice small in a way I'd never heard before. It hit me then that this house wasn't just shelter to them. It was identity. Proof they had made it in a town where everyone knew everyone's business. Losing it would mean people asking questions they didn't want to answer, but keeping it under these conditions meant sacrificing their future and Brandon's. Now, I said, we tell the truth. To Brandon, to the bank, to ourselves. No more surprises, no more narrative about who's loyal and who left. We stop treating this house like a sacred relic and start treating it like what it is. A too expensive asset we can't afford that's about to drag all of us under if we cling to it. Eleanor nodded firmly. She's right, she said. You've been worshipping the building and neglecting the people inside it. Mom's eyes filled again. But all our memories are here, she said weakly. Your first day of school, Christmas mornings, birthdays, it's all in these walls. No, I said softly but firmly. It's in us. The walls just witnessed it. I could feel a knot in my own throat, but I pushed through it. You think my revenge tonight is about exposing you or humiliating you in front of the family. It's not. My revenge is making sure the lie dies here, at this table, instead of 3 months from now when it would have destroyed Brandon's credit and your retirement in one blow. I looked from my parents to the rest of the family, catching my cousin's wide eyes, my aunt's discomfort, my uncle's guilty avoidance. You wanted a nice Thanksgiving memory? I added. Here it is, the night we finally chose honesty over appearances. And here's where I want to ask you, the one listening to this. If your parents had lied for years to protect you, but that lie almost ruined your sibling's life, would a few tears and a sorry be enough for you? Or would you, like me, need to see real change, hard decisions, sold houses, public admissions, before you could even think about calling it forgiveness? Brandon came back in with red-rimmed eyes and a jaw set like concrete. He didn't sit. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, like he was bracing himself for impact. So, he said, are we done with the secrets? If you want the whole truth, I replied, Sit down. There was a long pause. Then he pulled out his chair and dropped into it like gravity had doubled. I slid my phone toward Dad. You talk, I told him. I'm not carrying this for you. Slowly, haltingly at first, my father laid out the entire story, the refinance that had seemed like a good idea at the time, the medical bills after Mom's surgery, the credit cards they juggled when Dad's consulting gigs dried up, the calls they stopped answering when the numbers on the caller ID started to look familiar. Every choice, every rationalization, every "we'll fix it later" that never actually got fixed. By the time he finished, the room felt like it had shrunk. Brandon sat there, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white, eyes fixed on a spot on the table. So you were going to sign all of that to me, he said finally, wrap it up in a bow and call it my future. And you didn't think that was something I should know? We were going to explain, Mom said weakly. When? He shot back. After the bank notice showed up? After I'd moved in and you two were on a cruise somewhere, while I tried to figure out why my gift came with an eviction date? Dad flinched. We weren't trying to hurt you, he said. We thought if the house stayed in the family. Stop saying the house like it's a person, I cut in. It's wood and drywall and a mortgage. What matters is us. Brandon looked at me then, and for the first time all night, I saw past his anger to the kid who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. Did you know? He asked quietly. All of it? I knew about the foreclosure date, I admitted. I didn't know how deep it went until tonight. But I knew enough to realize you were being set up to take a fall for a problem you didn't create. He swallowed hard. So why didn't you? I don't know. Let them do it? Let them sign it to me, watch me crash, then swoop in and say, I told you so? It was a fair question. A revenge story practically writes itself that way. Because as mad as I was about the "you get nothing" line, I said, I couldn't stand the idea of you waking up one day and realizing our own parents had used you as a shield. I wanted justice, not a body count. He let out a shaky laugh. Justice, he repeated. Is that what this is? It's a start, I said. Justice looks like everyone owning their part. Mom and Dad being honest. You admitting that you loved being the golden child a little too much. And me admitting that part of why I didn't push harder earlier was because I wanted them to see what happens when you choose fantasy over facts. Eleanor nodded. She's right, she said. Running from this will just make it worse. You kids deserve better than a legacy of denial. Dad rubbed his temples. So what do we do? He asked. Tomorrow, I said, we call the bank together. We talk to a realtor. We get real numbers. We figure out whether a short sale makes more sense than waiting for foreclosure. We treat this like a project, not a tragedy. And the house? Mom whispered. We've lived here for 30 years. Then you'll grieve it, I said, softer now. But you won't let it take your retirement or your son's credit score down with it. You taught us that family comes before things. This is your chance to prove you meant it. Now I want to ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you push your parents to sell the home that holds your childhood memories to save their future, even if they hate you for it in the moment? Or would you let them cling to it and watch everything else fall apart? In the weeks after Thanksgiving, our family group chat turned into a war room. There were no more filtered pictures of holiday centerpieces or good morning gifts. Instead, there were screenshots of bank statements, links to articles about short sales, and a shared spreadsheet where I tracked every call, every fee, every possible option. It was brutal. It was also the most honest we'd been with each other in years. Brandon came to every meeting. He sat across from the banker as she calmly explained what upside down meant in their case. He asked hard questions about timelines and credit impact. At one point, when Mom started to cry, he reached over and squeezed her hand. We're not mad because you lost control, he told them. "We're mad because you pretended you hadn't." They listed the house 3 weeks before Christmas. The day the sign went up in the yard, Mom stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching strangers slow their cars to look. "I feel like I'm putting a price tag on my entire life," she said. "You're putting a price tag on a building," I corrected gently. "Your life is coming with you." The offers that came in were lower than they'd hoped, but higher than I feared. In the end, after the sale closed and the bank was paid, there wasn't much left. No grand inheritance, no nest egg. Just enough to keep my parents from drowning and a lot of paperwork documenting the mess they'd climbed out of. "So, this is it," Dad said the day they signed the final documents, his voice hollow. 30 years for this." "No," I said quietly. 30 years for 2 kids who still show up. For a grandmother who still tells the truth. For a chance to start over without hiding. Brandon snorted. "Leave it to the product manager to spin bankruptcy into a feature." But there was a hint of a smile in his voice. We found them a small rental closer to my place in Austin, something they could actually afford on their fixed income. It wasn't fancy. The walls were beige, the yard was tiny, and the kitchen was half the size of the old one. But the first night we had dinner there, something strange happened. I realized I wasn't waiting for a bomb to drop. There were no secret bills hidden in drawers, no unspoken resentment simmering under the table. Just all of us, crowded around a cheap dining set, passing store-bought rolls and cheap wine, talking openly about money, mistakes, and what we'd do differently next time. "Do you hate us?" Mom asked me quietly as we washed dishes afterwards. "For how we handled everything." I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I hate what you did," I said. "I hate that you lied and nearly sacrificed Brandon's future to avoid being embarrassed. But I don't hate you. I wouldn't have fought this hard if I did." "And me?" Brandon asked later, nudging my shoulder. "Do you still think I'm the golden idiot?" I laughed. "You were never an idiot," I said. "Just comfortable in a story that made you the hero and me the villain. Now we're just 2 flawed humans who survived a very dumb plot twist." He bumped my shoulder again. "Next Thanksgiving, can we just fight about politics like normal families?" "No," I said. "Next Thanksgiving, we're going to fight over who gets stuck doing dishes." And here's the part I hope you don't miss. My revenge wasn't that my brother lost a house, or that my parents were forced to sell it. My revenge was that the truth finally mattered more than keeping everyone comfortable. That the girl who moved away and didn't care turned out to be the one who dragged our family out of denial and into reality. That the next time someone at that table says, "We're fine," they'll know they have to prove it. So let me end with a question for you. Have you ever uncovered a secret in your family that changed everything? Did you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or did you do what I did? Light a match at the Thanksgiving table and watch the lies burn so something honest could grow in the ashes.